Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and I'm not sure who needs to hear this today, but the world is a more beautiful place with you in it.
Aw, that's so sweet.
And joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. Well, your intro is going to make it a little awkward for my joke, but let's go. What do you call a murderer with two butts?
Yep. A murderer with two butts. The cheek slayer?
It's an assassin. Assassino. I told you it was going to be awkward after I picked my joke for today.
Real awkward. Good way to start Monday.
Yes.
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for that.
So, Voyse.
So, Timstradamus.
Looks like we have some new shout-outs to make.
We do. We have new Teatreons. Welcome to the Tea Club, Robin Yates Martinez, Allie Mentz, and Lark.
Welcome in. Love and appreciate you guys.
Well, today we're going to do something a little bit different. So, remember last week I told you I wanted to replicate that Moon Princess tea? Well, I would like to introduce you to my replicated tea.
Oh, yes.
You have to pick up the teacup, and now we can both try it.
It smells fantastic.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. Every bit is good.
It's like having an apple pie.
I like the little chunks in it still.
10
out of 10.
Perfect. While we go ahead and enjoy this delicious apple pie tea, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, this story was actually provided to us by one of our Teatreons. So let me go ahead and say I'm excited to read it. Would I be the a-hole if I, 37 male, ended my otherwise perfect marriage over my wife's 32 female religious beliefs? I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. My wife and I have been together for almost 9 years and married for 6. From the outset, we knew our beliefs differed. I am atheist, she is Christian. But in recent years, my wife has had a resurgence in her beliefs. We have a great marriage. We both still love each other very much. We are both faithful, and we have spent almost every waking moment together since we got together. We both struggle with mental health issues and have leaned on each other extensively. Due to my wife's beliefs getting stronger, there has been tension as of late. She believes in Jesus, God, heaven, and hell. I don't. This has never been an issue before, but she has been super into her faith for the last 2 years. She says she has a personal relationship with both Jesus and God, and says they talk to her sometimes. Her identity has become completely wrapped up in her religion and has made a lot of changes, all of which I've been outwardly supportive of, but have caused me to grow concerned. She has stopped listening to secular music. We only listen to Christian music now, and my wife says she doesn't mind if I want to listen to my own music, but she'll leave the room or put in earbuds, which tends to discourage me from playing stuff I like. We used to watch horror shows and movies every day, but now she refuses and no longer wants to see or hear favorite shows like Rick and Morty, South Park, Family Guy, etc. I've been supportive over this too, because I don't view these things as a big enough deal to get upset over, but I'd be lying if I said all of these numerous little things aren't building up. We now not only go to church, but we go every single Sunday, and my wife gets really angry or upset when we run late. If cars in front of us are going too slow, she gets really impatient, bordering on road rage, and I find myself having to say things like, if God wants you at church, he would probably not want you to become impatient or hostile, and this usually works to chill her out. But it's still there. There's more stuff like this, and I'd be happy to dive into more details if anyone wants, but I think you get the point. None of these things individually bother me or are a big deal, and I encourage her to follow her beliefs, but I myself am atheist. I never push my beliefs onto her, but I find her side of things to be a bit much lately. It's been a transition for sure, as the majority of our relationship has been completely secular. I don't want to be a barrier to her following her beliefs, but I think my complete support has led to some difficulty on my part in expressing my frustrations when they occur. The thing that has led me to post here is the belief in an afterlife. I don't personally believe in heaven and hell, but she does, and she has made it explicitly clear that she thinks I'm going to hell when we die. This is due to my struggles in believing in God. She gets really upset when the topic comes up and says things like, "It's a shame I won't be with you in the afterlife," and "I'm really sad that I'm going to forget all about you when I die." She very strongly believes that because I don't share her beliefs in God, that I'm going to hell. Despite me not believing in hell personally, this topic has grown to really upset me. I hate the passive-aggressive way she speaks about it, and it's honestly devastating to hear your partner say you're going to hell. I've lived my life very intentionally, trying to be kind to others, act respectfully, give back to the community, etc. I ran a group home for adults with developmental disabilities for 5 years, and now work with cancer patients to provide financial aid. I may not believe in heaven, but the way I live my life is very much the same as someone who practices Christianity. I think this is a fundamental difference, and honestly, I don't know if I can stay with someone forever if they think that despite all the good I've tried to do, that I deserve to suffer for eternity because my brain doesn't feel the same way about God. I've expressed this to her, and she says she's sorry for how she feels, but she still feels that way. It's become clear that this issue isn't going to go away, as neither of us is likely to change our beliefs. I think I might be the a-hole because I'm starting to feel resentment over the fact she thinks I'm going to hell, but don't believe in hell as an actual place. Do I have a right to feel hurt over this because I don't believe it myself? It feels like I'm an a-hole for thinking of ending things over this one issue, but I just can't reconcile the fact that she thinks I'm going to hell. She either believes that I'm going to eventually change and start believing in God one day, she said this to me, or that we're going to die, I'm going to go to hell, and she's going to spend eternity in heaven without the memories of our relationship and my existence. Would I be the a-hole if I left at some point in the future over this one thing? Edit, tried to make this brief, did not keep it brief.
What the spassamithaba we got from one of our Patreons.
They always give us some food for thought, don't they?
Good pick. So I will start into the story with this, because I say it every time when it comes to relationships and people wanting to get out of them or end them or dissolve them, however you want to term it. You can do it for whatever reason you deem is your reason. You don't owe someone that relationship. I don't believe you're the a-hole. Nobody wants to be told that they're going to go to hell for not believing in what you believe in. Nobody wants to hear that, especially from their partner, the one they're sharing a life with and supposedly growing with. I think that's a gross weaponization of religion, and it's a manipulation tactic.
Of potentially trying to convert him into her religion?
Yes. She knows where he stands. It sounds like for the better part of 9 years, they've had a good relationship. That's how he explains it. She stays in her corner with her beliefs, and he stays in his. But they were able to coexist together under that understanding. But somewhere along the way, about 2 years ago now, so 7 years in, everything changes for his wife. She delves more deeply into her religion, and you're allowed to. I'm not sure when their relationship started. I'm assuming probably in their early 20s, and now they're about to be 30-ish, maybe early 30s. Now, I'm all down for people discovering themselves and going more deeply into the things that they enjoy. She was good in my book up until the manipulation started and the guilting you. That's where she's wrong. And given the fact that she knows that you're atheist, I would wonder why she's so gung-ho about pushing your boundaries. Because this is the thing, I don't hear where you're pushing hers. I hear where your relationship is very unhealthy because you say you guys spent every second together and you're atheist. Why are you showing up to church with her? Why was that a boundary that you had to cross to make sure that you were still happy in your relationship?
That's very true.
Because this is the thing. You don't sound happy by breaking your own values. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm certain there are probably atheists that do show up at church, but I would like to think that that's because they want to. But you don't sound like you want to. It sounds like you are holding on way too tightly now. and doing things that make you unhappy, which is why now you're getting the resentment building up. I would suggest, because it sounds like he's already spoken to her about some of these things. I don't know how in depth they've gotten, where it would be more like, hey, you are pushing my boundaries. You are trying to change me in a way that I don't feel comfortable with anymore. Have you had these type of conversations with your partner?
The way that he's phrased it is a sort of sorry, not sorry. Sorry, I feel this way, but I still feel this way.
Yeah.
And when you get that approach from a partner regarding your feelings, that's pretty callous. I can understand saying that phrase more in jest, or when you have, I would say, an opinion about something that's very not related to someone's feelings. But when you say it regarding someone's feelings, it just shows that you don't care. Your thoughts are what matter, and how you treat others no longer matters over yourself. I think that in itself, a lot of people, when it comes to that phrase, is a very dual-edged sword. You can be very strong, but there's a difference between being a strong person and being a very callous and cold person.
Sure. Your wife seems to not care how you feel and think about this. If you haven't had because it sounds like he has though, this is why I'm coming back on it. If you haven't had that conversation where you know some truths are coming out, that if she keeps pushing these boundaries, that you are prepared to leave the marriage for your mental health, then you need to have it. Maybe think about getting into some form of counseling. You said you both are struggling with mental health. So I assume that you're probably already in some type of therapy or counseling. And if not, you definitely need to get there, because it sounds like she doesn't understand what boundaries are. And just because you have a religion doesn't mean you get to push people around. In my opinion, you would not be the a-hole for wanting to leave the marriage over this. It sounds like she's changing. And we all do over time. The person you get into a relationship with, this is 9 years in. Seldom are you the same person 9 years into anything. Even if you're not in a relationship, you change a lot.
They say anatomically, your body changes every 7 years. All of the little bits of atoms that make you up change in 7 years fully. I can't imagine that the way that we think wouldn't also change.
And you want to. Growth is important. She's growing in this direction, and unfortunately, you're growing in the opposite.
Sounds like diverging paths.
And that's not a bad thing. It's not a failure of a marriage. It's an understanding that two people are no longer compatible in that way. So, yeah, don't feel bad about needing to move on.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. It was split kind of a little oddly when it came to how individuals were putting their viewpoints out. You had some Redditors claiming that this is one of the reasons why they never date or deal with anyone that's religious, because it can get overbearing. They can cross those boundaries and it feels like weaponization. In fact, a lot of Redditors came forward saying that they had this type of mentality where they believed that their friends and other family members who didn't have the exact same belief were going to hell. And there was a part of them that were petrified about this until they learned to either come to accept that not every religion is the same and to respect those boundaries, not think that badly, not that negatively, or they just veered away from that religion altogether because for them, it put them in a bad mental state. And I thought bringing forward those viewpoints from Redditors is really important because you don't know what kind of person you are till you take a step back and really reflect on everything that's happening with you, especially when it comes to your beliefs. Now, additionally, there were other Redditors that came forward saying, look, we get it that there's a lot of bad when it comes to how some people deal with their religious beliefs, but I don't think that it's really being brought forward that your wife could potentially be suffering from some severe mental health issues. This sounds like bipolar disorder or something along schizophrenia if she says that she hears someone talking to her and has been changing her and is not a normal thing that she said before, and it's been changing how she is and what she's been acting towards our OP. So maybe take that into consideration too. You might want to question those bits as well.
That's an interesting point. I guess I look past that only because I grew up in the South, and I remember having people tell me they heard the voice of Jesus, and so I didn't really think about it in that term, but that could be something definitely worth looking into.
I also agree with that. I really did overlook that because growing up, I remember my grandfather saying you need to have those conversations between you and God when it comes to letting things off your chest or asking for advice. As I got older, for me, it just became my own conscience that I felt like I was talking to rather than some outwardly body out there. But if that's not something that someone has said or talked about before, I would have to say, yes, maybe our OP should take that into consideration, as I thought it was a very good point that Redditors were coming up with. Now, across the board, it was very supportive that if our OP was in a relationship that was harming him, even emotionally, he's got every right to walk away from that. It should not be a place where he's beholden to someone else. Now, I will bring up, this seems to be our OP's main account. And I looked at their other posts across other forums just to try and get a feeling for who our OP was. And about 2 months ago, it looks like he posted something regarding his father. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and summarize that. All the other listeners can go ahead and look at this post, as it is available for anybody to read. But the gist of it was, it sounds like our OP has ADHD and their father was not very supportive and drank quite a bit. They hesitantly reconciled throughout the recent years. However, it seems that his father is on his deathbed, and it seems as if his father expects for him to try and take care of him. I think those are very rough things for someone to be dealing with. You're dealing with potentially a loved one, even if the relationship isn't very close. You're still dealing with a loved one that you're potentially losing. Coming to terms that you're not beholden to try and take care of them, especially with how they treated you when you were younger. So you're dealing with a lot of that guilt, which they did admit in the post they are feeling guilty that they don't want to be around their father because it's mentally taxing them and it's toxic for him. And then on top of that, you turn around and your partner's telling you that you're going to go to hell because you don't share the same beliefs. I can imagine, as I said, this other post was 2 months ago, and it seems that they're dealing with, and they've been straight up with saying that their mental health is in jeopardy right now. So for them to step forward and say, look, I feel like I might be a bad person because I cannot handle this and I feel like I have to walk away from this relationship, but they're dealing with losing a loved one that they might not be close with, but it's still a key figure in their life regardless. I don't know. It seems like our OP is dealing with quite a lot, and my heart is really going out to them because it doesn't seem like it's an easy thing for them. Regardless, the pain is going to be there. The pain of either deciding to not be beholden to their father, who they know is passing away, and to potentially let go of a wife that is weaponizing their religion and spiraling them more into this sort of, it feels as if it's depression to me.
I just hope that ROP has someone in his corner. That's going to be very important throughout this next phase of his life, because it sounds like you're right. He's suffering from a lot of guilt.
Well, our OP did provide us with some edits. So let me go ahead and read the first one now. They said, "Thank you for the overwhelming support, everyone. Wasn't expecting this to get as much feedback as I have. I have long suspected bipolar disorder, especially since it runs in her family, but I don't really know how to address that. I don't know what she is saying to her therapist, so I don't know if she's being truthful or honest about what's going on in her head. If anyone has any feedback or advice on how to tackle this, I would really appreciate it because of the sensitivity of the subject. I agree with the statements indicating red flags for bipolar disorder or other mental illness. I just don't know what to do with that information. I've addressed my concerns with her before, but the response has been getting defensive or avoidant. I don't know how to help someone who won't confront their inner demons. No pun intended, LOL." And then this is our last update from our OP. "Wow, I cannot believe how much this blew up. Thank you for your kind words, support, and advice. Phew, this has been a whirlwind. There's no possible way I can respond to everyone because there's around 2,000 comments as of now, but I will read every one of them. I know now that my marriage definitely has an expiration date, but I am in control of when that is. I am going to continue to keep the status quo for now while we work on this."
Well, it sounds like he was given some much needed support. I only hope for the best for him. And going forward, hopefully they can figure out what's either going on, or if he's not willing to stay in the relationship, has the strength to leave it.
What I find very interesting regarding our OP's last update was that, based on what I read before, their update, this third update, was actually re-edited and a lot of it was taken out. It sounds like they've got a lot on their plate and they're trying to think things over. I do wish them the very best. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about this situation. Am I the a-hole for telling my father that I don't care how nice his new girlfriend is, she'll never be welcome at my home? My 33 female father, 60s, can't keep a girlfriend for long. My mom divorced him when I was a child, and since then, he's had no interest in remarrying and settling down. Today, his relationships don't tend to last much longer than a year. I'm married with 2 kids, 8 male and 4 female. Because I don't want them to get attached to a new step-grandma every few months, I laid some ground rules when my son was born. My father wasn't allowed to introduce any new girlfriends to them until 6 months into the relationship. For most of my kids' lives, we had no problems with that. Then came my father's girlfriend from 2022, who was an absolute nightmare of a person. My kids only met her once, and it was enough for me to consider her unsafe to be around my family. Though they later broke up, my father initially tried to justify her behavior. Because of that whole affair, I changed the rule. He'd have to wait a year instead of 6 months before introducing new girlfriends. If he tried to do so before that, she'd never be allowed to come to my place. He protested at first, because most of his relationships don't last that long, but I held my ground and he eventually agreed. He was with another woman for 9 months last year, and my children never met her. My father has been with his newest girlfriend for 6 months. I've never really met her because she lives an hour away. She is apparently kid-obsessed and has been asking him to meet his grandkids for a while. He's tried to convince me to make an exception for her for a few months, but I always say no and remind him of my rules. My daughter is turning 4 this week, and we threw her a birthday party yesterday. It took place in an event space our building has. My father showed up an hour late with his new girlfriend. I approached them to ask what he was doing. He said that his girlfriend was excited to meet my kids, and he thought the birthday party would be a good place to introduce them. Because they'd been together for half a year, he didn't think it would be such a big deal. I told them the girlfriend had to leave before my kids saw her. My dad tried to give other excuses, such as the fact that my stepdad, who's been with my mom for more than 20 years, was there, and said that if she left, so would he. I told him to be my guest, and they both left. Earlier today, my father called me. He told me off for kicking them out of the party. He said my rules were too restrictive, and his girlfriend was a lovely person who deserved to meet my kids. I told him that not only do I not care how nice she is, but I'll also never welcome her at my home after the stunt he pulled. She can meet my kids after the 12-month mark, but not at my place. We fought for a while before he hung up on me. My husband and my sister, who's staying with us for a few days, witnessed most of the fight. My husband is on my side, but my sister thinks I'm being needlessly cruel to a woman I've never met. Am I the a-hole?
Well. It looks like our papa is using the grandkids to seal the deal.
It sounds like it.
And his daughter put her foot down. Those are boundaries. And it's funny because at one point it was a 6-month waiting period before he could introduce whoever he was dating to the rest of the family. And then from something happening, do they ever clarify what transpired to move that goalpost from 6 to 12 months?
No, they don't really say.
Oh, all right. ROP has boundaries. Her father wasn't respecting those boundaries and she had to enforce them. You're not the a-hole, OP. And for your sister to look at it any other way than that shows that she also doesn't have a clear understanding of what boundaries mean.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. And in fact, a lot of Redditors came out saying parents can set healthy boundaries for their children to ensure that their young children aren't around the wrong people or dealing with a lot of strangers that OP or any of the parents may not know. Additionally, our OP actually put in the comments section that she believed the girlfriend was aware of her rule. because her father started asking about his girlfriend seeing the kids at 4 months. And our OP said no. And then they come to the party unannounced. For a lot of Redditors, they were saying, look, you've just pointed out where your father's really bad with boundaries, and this new person in his life clearly doesn't know them either. If there's been a rule that's been told to others, and that person still decides that they want to overstep that boundary, it just shows that they're disrespectful and entitled. And that's how Redditors were pointing it out.
Agreed.
Now, I found it funny because there was one commenter that I read. Mind you, there's a lot of comments, so... But they were saying, hey, the grandpa can date. I don't know why you're being so hateful. And I found it interesting because there was a Redditor that came forward and they said, anyone who doesn't understand a simple parent boundary created to ensure small children aren't exposed to a bunch of people who become random after the relationship ends is playing at being a missing stair. I must say, that was actually funny.
I don't think anyone was being upset that the grandfather was dating. I don't think anyone cares about how frequently he dumps or gets in new relationships. That's not what's on the table here. It's the introducing the kids repeatedly to new people all the time. So what a weird hill to pick.
I found it funny. I like this commenter. They actually put more in their comment, such as, we all know that introducing children to dating partners before 6 months is bad form. And I do agree with them. It sounds like they've been on the dating scene. They express how they're child-free, how they've been an auntie since they were 21, that they've been single and dating, that they adore all kids, and they've dated many people with kids. One of their own rules is that they never meet a partner's kids before 6 months. That's their own rule because they don't want to be another face in a child's life where they might just up and disappear.
Sure.
And I think that's very commendable for this Redditor to be so aware and to set these healthy boundaries themselves without having it be enforced by the parental figure. I think anyone that takes this personally doesn't understand that being another face in a child's life that potentially ups and disappears can actually have very negative effects in their lives, especially when it comes to stability. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about canceled plans. Am I the a-hole for considering ending a 6-year relationship because my fiancé canceled our plans? I, 28 female, and my fiancé, 26 female, had a disagreement the other day. For Christmas, we got 4 tickets to a stand-up show, so we invited 2 of our friends to come along, made plans, and booked a restaurant before the show. It is now less than 2 weeks until the show, and my fiancé told me that she can no longer go since she's playing a football match that evening. I got upset since it was so close to the date, and I don't really have other friends that go well with the ones we invited. I said it felt like she wasn't prioritizing me as this had been planned for 4 months. She got angry at me for being upset and said I didn't understand, and then started saying some hurtful things. I decided to let it go. Yesterday, we had dinner at her parents' house, and I asked her about an upcoming event for my work, also less than a month away. She told me that she wasn't going to go to that, as her cousin had invited her to see their new baby and spend the night. I again got upset and told her she had already said she was going to go and that I had asked to add her to the invitation list. She said she couldn't go another day to her cousin's as she had work, and made it out as I was making a big deal out of it. When I kept arguing, I said it might make me look bad at work with such short notice. She said something along the lines of, fine, I guess I won't go see my cousin then. I'm feeling really defeated, and she has been cranky with me since. I just feel like it is childish that she won't just talk to me. What really broke the camel's back was how she had been short and snappy with me and the 4-year-old boy we foster for a week and a month. She locked herself away as I gave him a bath. We watched a movie and did bedtime. I feel like if she can act like this, not only to me, but also ignore a young child, what does that mean for possible children in our future? Please give me advice. I'm not sure what to do. I have asked her to talk to a professional, but she doesn't want to. Am I the a-hole for considering ending this relationship?
Okay, so how long has our couple been together?
They don't really say.
Well, that's kind of important to the story. I don't know how long they've been participating in this behavior within their relationship, but it sounds like they're living together.
Correct. And that they foster a child a weekend every month.
So we're talking about a relationship that's been going on for a little while. She has already alluded to the fact that her partner is not wanting any type of therapy or counseling for what they're going through right now.
Correct.
That's why I say it's very important to understand how long this relationship has been going on for. If you're acting like this at year 3, 4, 5, and you know there's problems in the relationship, because clearly she says it, her partner has been conflict avoiding.
And then making them feel bad about bringing up that conflict.
Well, see, you can hear it where she says, I'm telling her exactly how I'm feeling. And instead of actually sitting there and interpreting each other's feelings healthily, she's becoming irate. So she's not actively listening. And that's a skill that a lot of people still need to work on. Before you get angry, before you start going into your feelings about something, you need to listen to your partner. Hear exactly what it is that's bothering them before you attack. If you find yourself on the offensive every single time someone says something you don't like, you need to work on your active listening skills. It's very important. Because if you don't, you start getting into these type of situations where it's almost like walking on eggshells all the time. How can you truly grow together if at every moment you're scared that they're going to fly off the handle and make you feel like your wants and your desire for attending something that you guys have planned together 4 months out. This wasn't something that just popped up. It's a comedy show with a dinner attached to it with 2 other people that you guys have invited. So for your girlfriend to, out of the blue, 2 weeks before the event, say that she's got some, I guess, a soccer event. I'm not really sure, but something pops up 2 weeks before.
Correct.
Regardless of what it is, your girlfriend should have understood that at that point, you guys have made these plans 4 months out. That should have taken priority. It didn't. You're starting to see who she is. If you haven't, these are very good indicators. She's selfish. She did it again. You had made a save the date for a work event. All of a sudden, now that you ask, because she wasn't willing to tell you these things when she changed the plans on you, she just did them. Because when you ask for the work event, she goes, well, obviously I'm not going to come to that because I'm spending time with my sister. ROP did not know about this change, like she didn't know about the change with the comedy show. They don't ever actually have conversations about things. Because if something is truly important to you, let's say there is a butting of heads when an event, a certain day or night happens, and one person really wants to change it and do something else. At least having the conversation and being constructive with each other, that's a lot more healthier than she going, oh, I just changed the plans on you. I didn't tell you until you asked me.
That's very true.
She's telling you that she doesn't want to seek any type of help. What more can you do? So in my opinion, OP, you would not be the a-hole for wanting to end the relationship.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. In fact, some Redditors came forward saying, is there a question of fidelity here? Because if they're trying to change plans and stay out the night and stay overnight somewhere else and it's very last minute, it kind of sounds like something fishy's going on. Additionally, other Redditors were saying that if OP's partner is always prioritizing their needs before OP and never properly communicating, then it probably might be time to exit the relationship if they don't see any hope of it getting better. Now, the gist of a lot of Redditors, just to sum it up, is you can't work on a relationship with someone if that someone doesn't want to try working on that relationship too.
It's got to go both ways.
Our OP did put something down in the comments, which I would like to go ahead and read. OP says, I saw I made a mistake writing 4 months. I meant 3 months. We got the tickets as a Christmas present from my brother and his wife, who had intended to go with us but couldn't, so they gifted us all 4. As for the cheating, I really don't think she is cheating. I work a 9 to 5 while she works in 24-hour shifts, meaning she is off 5 to 6 days a week. If she was cheating, she wouldn't have canceled plans to meet an affair partner. She also shares her location with me and isn't protective over her phone at all. I honestly just think she has some issues to work on and might need help doing so, but won't take that step. She has gone a couple times before on my request, but only once or twice, and then stopped even if she liked the psychiatrist. She has asked me to go as well, which I did, as I had a parent unalive themselves along with a neglectful upbringing. I think the latter is why this is so upsetting to me, not feeling prioritized. What's worse is she knows what it is like for me.
You can't make people want to get help. And at some point, we do have to take responsibility for the relationships that we are in.
Agreed. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about names again. Am I the a-hole? My 39 female ex-husband, 37 male, is insisting I change my last name back to my maiden name because of his new fiancée, 24 female, feels it will be awkward for her and I to have the same last name. Am I the a-hole for refusing to change it? My 39 female ex-husband, 38 male, has been dating this woman for 3 years. For context, she is 24 years old. My ex and I were married for 12 years and have been divorced for 5 years. We have 3 kids together who are now teenagers. My ex and I got divorced because we were young when we met and got married, and we grew apart as people. It was a mutual decision, and we agreed our kids came first and have always co-parented very well. This has been the case up until the last year when his girlfriend moved in with him. Previously, we would do holidays and kids' birthdays together. Now, when she is present, they won't sit near me at our kids' sporting events. I have always been nice to this woman despite my kids expressing they do not like her and they feel like their dad acts differently when she is around. My ex told me early on she wasn't a fan of me and felt I intimidated her. When I asked him for examples of how I intimidated her, he said it's my face, that I have resting face, and it makes her uncomfortable. My ex and her got engaged over Christmas, and my kids were less than thrilled, my daughter especially. She feels her dad made a major life decision without even talking to them about it first. My ex called me yesterday, saying he is giving me a heads up that I have a year to change my last name back to my maiden name, as his fiancée is expressing her distaste and concern for her, and I having the same last name when they get married. I told him we agreed in our divorce that I could keep his last name until I felt the need to change it, and that is what is listed in our paperwork. I also told him I don't want to have a different last name than our kids. He said I'm being unreasonable and refusing to see how this would make his fiancée uncomfortable. I told him I can't see it from her side because I am a grown-up and not an immature child like she is. He told me I could ask anyone about this situation and everyone would agree with her. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to change my last name to make her happy?
Not everyone would agree with that, Wiener Jacket. She already said it. It's in the court papers. They agreed on things well before the current fiancé had a problem. I want to frame this very, very correctly, though. He's 37. That fiancé is 24 years of age. When they started dating, that would have put her at 21. Did I put that in the right frame?
Yes.
Okay. I am an artiste. You're telling your ex-wife something that you guys agreed upon now is no longer valid. That's not how it works, bud. And your 24-year-old woman child of a fiance doesn't have that right either. She needs to back off, and your ex-husband needs to facilitate that because that's in his court. If I'm you, I would definitely send them an email letting them know where you stand on this particular subject. And I would also have a conversation with my ex-husband as to how he's been conducting himself with the kids and his fiance, because it sounds like they're creating a battleground right now, and those kids are going to be in the middle of it, choosing between parents. Make sure you both figure out how to make sure that going forward, your family can still be healthy. You're seeing where a 24-year-old is basically trying to, I don't know what it is.
Strong arm, maybe?
Maybe there is some type of insecurity that's played out here. Because from everything else, it sounds like they dissolved their marriage amicably. They said they were both growing apart and it was time to move on, and that they were being good parents towards their kids. I heard a lot of good till we got to the back half where he finds a 21-year-old and now apparently she's going to call the shots and nothing they have agreed upon before her matters anymore.
Apparently, the reason why she gets to call the shots is our OP has resting big face.
I didn't even touch that. So you're intimidated by someone and that's why you've chosen not to like them. That's what I heard.
Correct.
Not that she did anything to deserve it. Just be careful. Do what's in the best interest of those kids. Make sure that your ex-husband and his fiance know where you stand. So in my opinion, OP, you're definitely not the a-hole. Keep your last name, change your last name. I get why you're trying to, because you want to share the last name with your kids. I understand that. You can have your reasonings as to why, but at the end of the day, the last names don't really matter. It's the love that you've given those children that they'll remember.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. There were a lot of Redditors that came out with different varying points on this. The first being, your ex-husband can go ahead and change his name to his girlfriend instead. Our OP did say that she did offer to have the kids' names changed to her maiden name, and then she would change her name back to her maiden name. That apparently did not sit well with him, because as is the trope when it comes to, and I hate to say it, a lot of men out there, the children have to have the men's last name. There's no way that it can be any different than that. So then more commenters came out and said, well, then he can just sit on it. It's been. Now, let me go ahead and read an update from our OP. Our OP says, several of you have asked for an update on my ex-husband giving me a year to change my last name back to my maiden name because his fiancée was uncomfortable with her and I having the same last name. I tried to link the original post, but it is not allowing me to do so, so I'm not sure the best way to give an update, so I will try this. To clarify, the reason he gave me a year is because they are getting married sometime next year and wanted my name changed prior to their wedding. Anyway, my ex called me yesterday and said he had done a lot of research on ex-wives keeping the ex-husband's last name after a divorce. He stated he didn't realize how common this is, especially when there are children from the marriage. He also said, this had been my last name for 17 years. My entire adult life has been with this last name, and I have built a career with it. He basically acknowledged that every reason I had to keep it was legitimate. He apologized for the way he initially approached me about changing my last name, and explained he is in a bad spot trying to make his fiancée happy. He also explained she feels that by me keeping his last name must mean I'm still in love with him, and this is my secret way of assuring we end up together again someday. I informed him this was not, nor will it ever be the case. Yes, I care deeply about him because I was married to him for 12 years, and he is the father of my children, and I want him to be happy in life. However, I fell out of love with him many years ago, and that will not change. He said he informed his fiancée that he will not bring this up to me again, and if she didn't like it, the ball was in her court to decide if she wanted to continue their relationship. Thank you for all the feedback on my original post. I never expected this kind of response, and an overwhelming amount of comments and advice.
Now that's good communication.
Agreed. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about an engagement. Am I the a-hole for reacting wrong to my brother's engagement? Sorry if this is kind of all over the place. So on Sunday, I, 19 female, learned on a Zoom call with my family that my brother, Harry, 22 male, has just gotten engaged to his girlfriend, Jessica, 20 female. When Harry told us, everyone but me was pretty enthusiastic, but I just kind of sighed and said nothing. Harry didn't display any reaction towards my admittedly lukewarm reaction, but afterwards my mom called me and told me that I was rude for not being excited. She said that I need to respect all members of the family, including Jessica, and that I need to reconsider my behavior if I want to be invited to our vacation in the spring. Harry and I were really close growing up. Since he and then I started college, we've been less close, but him and I still talk every week or two. Harry and Jessica have been together for around 2 years now. Here's where it gets complicated. I knew Jessica back in high school, and she was not what you would call a kind soul. She had a particularly nasty streak. She would not pay attention during classes and always tried to cheat off people's homework, and I assume got away with it. She tried, semi-successfully, to steal my boyfriend. She bullied one of my best friends, calling her fat, among other things. This bullying worsened, if not caused altogether, her eating disorder, and it's something I'll never be able to forgive or forget. She is just one of those people who would just mess around with other people's lives like it's a game and not something she is invested in. About 6 months ago, I had a heart-to-heart with Harry about Jessica. I laid out my concerns and the history of her behavior, hoping it might make him reconsider or at least think deeply about the relationship. He said he'd consider what I said, but didn't continue the conversation much more. Since then, we talked regularly as usual, and things seemed normal between us. He didn't talk about Jessica often, but he didn't hide their relationship either. I really was happy it sounded like it might be dying off, though. I had no idea he was getting engaged to her until he announced it. I don't know if he had been telling other people in the family besides me, or if it was really just an abrupt decision. To make it worse, I am worried that he told Jessica about our conversation 6 months ago. In her announcement on Facebook, annoying ring on hand, photograph in tow, she wrote something like, "I know not everyone in our families are supportive, but we have each other and that's what matters." So he ignored my warning and he told her all about it. Part of me wonders if I should just swallow my feelings for the sake of family harmony, but another part of me feels like I'd be betraying my old friend, my own values, and my brother by pretending to be happy about this engagement. And I am bad about holding back my truth. So am I the a-hole for feeling upset and possibly wanting to voice my concerns again, even though it might cause friction in my family? Or should I just keep my feelings to myself and let Harry make his own decisions and mistakes? I just feel like there's nobody who I can talk about with this that will really understand. Am I the a-hole?
So we're talking about siblings in this story. We have a 19-year-old OP and a 22-year-old brother.
Correct.
He's found someone that he's fallen in love with and they're going to get married. Good for them. Now, unfortunately for our OP, the person that her brother is about to get married to apparently was her high school bully. So there's a lot of history between these two women. And our OP, I guess, had a sit down heart to heart with her brother explaining all of these problems. And, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to feel what you feel about somebody. That's not the problem here. The problem would be that it almost feels like I can't believe you're still going forward with this, knowing that I hate her so much. That's the feeling I'm getting from our OP.
I could see that.
I understand that was your childhood bully, but you have to understand people can change. And I'm not saying every childhood bully changes and that you should be forgiving. What I'm saying is your brother found someone to love. And if you've given him your truth already, which it sounds like you did, and he still made his decision, you have to take yourself back from that situation and respect that this is what he wants to do. Because if you don't, you're going to end up creating a wedge between you and your brother. You say you're close, but are you that close if 6 months has passed and he hasn't even told you he was going to propose to his girlfriend?
That's true.
Have you already started a wedge because of the way you talk? Because there's something at the very end of that kind of explains to me who you are in an essence. You say you're one of those people that doesn't hold back their truths. All that read to me was you say things to people without measure. That can be hard to be around.
I have met those people. They are not easy.
You're allowed to tell people your truths, but you're also allowed to be tactful. So you already come off as one of those people. If it's my way, it's no way, or I'm going to let you know. And then you should take my advice. Although I will say this for you, you're 19. There are a lot of people who are young and act like that. There's something you have to grow through to learn how to respect people and their opinions and their choices in life.
And you can have your truth while just keeping it to yourself, because sometimes it doesn't need to be said.
So in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole for how you feel about the girl. You're allowed to feel that way. She was a childhood bully. She sucks. In your mind, I understand that. But you have to respect what your brother's choosing to do. And just be there. If things go sideways, you can always tell him, hey, I tried. That's probably not a great way to go about it, but
I told you so.
Yeah, don't. Just be there for if things do. Yeah, I guess what I am trying to say is you're not the a-hole in my opinion, but if you push past this, if you try to force your will on your brother, you will definitely be the a-hole.
That is in line with what most of our Redditors think. The consensus is that our OP's not the a-hole. A lot of Redditors came forward saying, hey, OP, you're entitled to your feelings. You're not being rude about it. Just don't try and force it more than this. Otherwise, you could just be overstepping your boundaries. There were actually a lot of Redditors that came forward talking about the mother's reaction and almost manipulation of OP to get them to act in line. To essentially say, you have to be happy for every single member of the family, and that includes Jessica, or you're not going to get to do this. That struck a lot of Redditors wrong. And a lot of them came forward saying, your mother sounds like they're used to people listening to her, And if she doesn't get listened to, then she manipulates the situation.
Well, see, that's where I was pointing out where our OP kind of sounds like she's already in that type of mindset. You learn those things from your parents. So if she's not careful, she's already playing herself into that role going forward, because we do push off who we are onto our kids. Yes, they are their own person, but that tends to happen. They learn how to act through us. So if they're saying that about the mother and she's already acting like that with her brother, you see where I'm trying to draw the lines?
Oh, definitely. The thing here that I find funny is I can also draw parallels to this Jessica person, because then they go forward and on Facebook, it's like they try to manipulate the situation when it comes to calling out OP en masse by saying, I know a lot of family doesn't agree with us being together, but it's still happening. I find that funny because a lot of Redditors came forward and saying, based on how all of this is playing out, it sounds like your brother found a version of his mother in Jessica. And just be aware, you push this any forward, it might not show you in the best of light either.
You could risk losing your relationship with your brother.
Now let me go ahead and provide an edit from our OP. Our OP says, okay, thanks for all the responses, people. I will take some advice. Talk to mom and explain exactly what it is that Jessica has done and try to make her understand. Talk to Harry about our conversation before and find out how much of it he shared with Jessica and how she responded to what I said. Potentially talk to Jessica and seek therapy someday.
Well, atta girl, at least you're taking some recommendations from people. It's a good place to start.
They said, I'm not really in a position to go no contact with my family, and I still do want them in my life. I might post an update, but also it seems like the rules are kind of strict on that, which is fair. Message me or something if you want to hear what happens. Our OP actually does have some updates. So let me go ahead and provide you with the first. Our OP says, so a lot of people commented and sent me messages asking for an update to my previous post about unenthusiastic reaction to my brother's engagement announcement. Well, here it is. After reading people's replies, it sounds like the predominant opinion was that while I might not have been the a-hole immediately, I would become one if I kept pushing too hard against my brother's relationship. And I really don't want Harry to think I don't support him or to not talk to me about personal relationship matters. So I pretty much had decided to keep quiet and just go along with whatever Harry wanted. On Tuesday, he messaged me asking if I want to be a bridesmaid in Jessica's wedding party or a groomsmaid in his wedding party. After a little bit of back and forth, it became clear that he asked me because he knew I wasn't totally keen on Jessica, but still wanted me involved with the wedding. I was trying to be supportive, so I said it would be great to get to know Jessica better by being a bridesmaid, though I wasn't exactly looking forward to the experience. I admit, though, I had a little bit of an ulterior motive. From what I know of Jessica, she completely changes how she acts based on who she is around, which is how she manipulated Harry into proposing, of course. I thought, just maybe, if I could show Harry how Jessica acts with her girls, he might reconsider his decision to marry her. Anyway, on Thursday, I got added to a Facebook Messenger chat named Brilliant Bridal Bitches, wherein Jessica laid out her ground rules for being in the bridal party. They are, almost verbatim, 1. Participation in my bridal party is not just an honor, it's an investment. Be prepared to spend at least $1,000 on attire and accessories alone. I can make exceptions, but only if you ask me. 2. I alone will dictate the narrative of my wedding on social media. Any premature posts, especially unflattering photos of me, will result in immediate expulsion. 3. Your weight will be monitored weekly. Anyone not fitting into their dress will be kindly asked to step down. This wedding will look picture perfect, and I can't have you ruining the aesthetics. 4. From now until the wedding, I expect you to be on call 24/7. Wedding emergencies are real, and your commitment to solving them will be true test of your friendship. 5. You will fund and organize a lavish bachelorette party in my honor. Think exotic destination, luxury accommodations, and Instagram-worthy moments. 6. You will have fun, not just for your sake, but for me as well. Upon reading this, I just burst out laughing. Screenshot, click. I think I might be able to convince Harry from marrying Jessica after all. I'm just deciding now if I should play it cool and act like the rules are normal, or bring it up with Harry, or maybe show my mother because I know it would make her flip and almost certainly forgive me for sighing when Harry told us about the engagement.
I can get having the reaction to reading the list, but I still will err on the side of she's going down the wrong path here. I understand that it almost sounds like we've turned into a vendetta to make sure this doesn't happen. And I think she missed the point. She's now looking to collect evidence to destroy a relationship. That shouldn't be up to you, and you're pushing it now. I don't like that part. I can get how it must feel like you have to save your brother from something, but what it will look like and feel like is you're being petty and you're trying to destroy a relationship. I can get why people might stand on the other side and go, oh, you definitely show her all these things and, save your brother, but I think we might be going down some sketchy road.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like Jessica. Those rules are heinous.
They are, but what does it make you look like when you're saying, go look at this? Would you really, as the partner of that person, sit there and go, oh, okay, I'm ending the relationship over this? There's a lot to be said for wanting the end of a relationship when you're not in it.
That's very true. Well, let me go on to the second update. Thanks for all the advice and support from my whole situation with my brother getting engaged to an incredibly annoying former bully who has been manipulating him. I'm posting an update since a lot of people asked. I'm gonna have to be a bit of a disappointment though. After my last post, a lot of people were suggesting that I should be tricky and go to my mother and ask to borrow money to make the appropriate investment for being in Jessica's bridal party. I thought about that, but realized it was a bit too over the top. So instead, I just sent a screenshot of Jessica's rules and a couple other insane things she posted in the group chat to Harry and asked for his advice, telling him, I know I said that I wanted to join the bridal party to get to know Jessica better, but I'm worried it might not actually be good for me. Do you think I should bail and join your party instead? He called me instead of texting back and definitely sounded pretty surprised by what I showed him. I'm certain that the side of Jessica shown in those rules and other messages, including a new one saying that if your BMI is over 22, you are out of the wedding, in the group chat is not the side of herself that she showed to him. We had a good hour or so of conversation about what things were like between the two of them, and I learned a lot about where he was coming from. From what he told me, it sounds like getting married was really Jessica's idea. She has been going through some tough times later and apparently has struggled with depression in recent years. She's always wanted this perfect wedding and perfect married life, and she told him that it would make her feel better and fix all her issues if he proposed. So Harry, being the good person that he is, did it. He took pity on her even though he didn't really feel ready yet. He says he doesn't regret it though. She has been so much happier since the proposal, he said, and he is no longer worried about her running away or harming herself or worse. He said he was still shocked by what she posted to her girls and said he didn't know what to do next. I told him I am worried about him and his future if he stays with Jessica and goes through with the marriage. He thanked me and hung up. He still sounded pretty shaken. The next day, he asked me to call him, so I do that. He explains to me that everything was okay, and he talked to Jessica about the whole situation. She told him it was just a joke and the kind of thing her friends are used to sending in their messages. Apparently, she apologized and said that it was her fault for not making sure I was on her level. Harry's words trying to quote Jessica for what it's worth. I'm pretty skeptical of that though. She seems serious to me. She also seemed serious when she messaged me privately, "You are on thin ice." She also sent another message in the main group chat saying, "This is all of y'all's reminder that I need your full support, and any undermining of my and my wedding will have serious consequences." So that's where things stand. I told Harry that I don't really believe it was a joke, and I believe that Jessica is trying to control him just like she's trying to control her bridesmaids. He just said that he is in a difficult situation. She is stressed out and he trusts her. So that's where things stand. Apparently, I am still in the darn bridal party. Dress stuff is happening in the next week or two. I really thought Harry would get to his senses, but apparently not yet. Now I need to decide what the heck to do next.
You should never have entered into that bridal side of the wedding because the only reason you were going there was for bad intentions. It didn't come from a good place and you shouldn't have even been there. You should have gone with your brother's side. You wouldn't have been inundated with all of this extra stuff that at the end of the day did you no good. You've buried yourself further into this drama for what can amount to is started as a petty vendetta. Now, through this, we've discovered that she is a super crappy person still. Yes, putting the thing with the weight, that's heinous.
But we knew that from the beginning.
Everything you've done has come from a bad place. At 19, I understand that, again, you're trying to save your brother. It sounds and feels good, but it doesn't do you any good. Nothing's changed. The only thing that happened was you got further into the drama needlessly. If you're going to enter into something with ill will or bad intentions, don't do it. Your brother was going to still walk the same path regardless of what you told him or what you found out. I feel for you because it sounds like you're a 19-year-old making 19-year-old mistakes.
And that's what I chalk this up to. Everything's going to have to play out the way that it's going to play out. Our OP, I understand their intentions. I know that they see that Jessica is a really bad person, but OP's not helping themselves. And to her brother's standpoint, it's just another person that's against the partner that he cares for.
She's playing a dangerous game with their relationship because the first time her brother and OP have a problem, guess what Jessica's going to do? She's going to say, this is exactly what she was doing when we were trying to get married. Do you remember how bad your sister was? You're playing into her games. What you should have done from the beginning was taken the high road. I know it's hard to do. I know it's really hard to do, especially when people are giving you terrible advice like, you should have asked your mother coyly for the money. No, do not dig where they're digging. My best piece of advice, get out of that bridal shower. Tell your brother you'd feel more comfortable in his and move on with life. Stop making this marriage about your vendetta with her. It's important that we learn to let people walk the path that they choose to be on. Because if you're not careful, you're sounding like you're becoming your mother.
I think in this case, our OP's not doing her relationship any justice with her brother. All that you need to do is have honesty and openness with your siblings or with any family member, truly, as long as you're close enough. But to try and use situations or hope for the worst to happen so that you can use it against someone, I think that's bad posture. All that ends up doing is making you look like the bad guy. And for someone who, when they love another person, like truly love another person and accept all the goods and the bads with them, it sounds like, yeah, there may be some things that OP's brother, Harry, doesn't and wasn't aware of when it came to his girlfriend. Whatever it is that they're dealing with, he's more than fine with working through. And the moment that you see that, all that you can do is let everything play out the way that it's going to. He needs to make the choice to end that relationship. And nothing you as an outside person can say or do is going to change that. But as you've said before, Timstradamus, they're 19.
Yeah.
They're kids, all of them. It's going to be something that they're going to have to learn. And the only thing that you can hope is that things turn out the best for Harry.
I just care for her mental health going forward. Don't be the monster that you're accusing her of.
I agree. And it's easy to be that way, especially when our OP's been very straight up in the comment section regarding how her mother is and how kind of manipulative they are, that you may or may not have picked up some of those tendencies and are doing it. It's not something that anybody tries to do maliciously, but once you reflect and realize, I think it's time to start growing and trying to figure out other ways. But let's go to our next story and see what you think about a mother's punishment. Am I the a-hole for not punishing my son for pantsing his sister? I, female 45, have 2 children, Sarah, female 16, and James, male 10. Given the gap in age between the two, they're not particularly close, but aside from the occasional bickering, they get on well. Yesterday evening, I allowed Sarah to have a friend over, Chris, male 16. I'm pretty sure Sarah has a crush on Chris, even if she tells me she doesn't and they're just friends. Anyhow, I have no problem with her inviting him over and let them use the front room to complete homework. I was in the kitchen at this point, so this is a retelling I have received from Sarah. From my understanding, James wanted to use the room to watch TV, and Sarah kept on telling him to go away. It turned into typical sibling bickering. As Sarah is much stronger, she told me she used a light shove to get James to leave. In retaliation, as Sarah was wearing loose-fitting sweatpants, James pulled these down, which left Sarah in her panties in front of Chris. She screamed but pulled them up straight away and shouted at James. At this point, I entered the room to all this commotion and sent James upstairs to his room to give Sarah and Chris some space. Chris left shortly after, and when he did, Sarah told me how embarrassed she was that no boy had ever seen her in her underwear before, and she wasn't even wearing a thong. I told her it wasn't too big a deal, but I would speak to James and tell him it's inappropriate and to not repeat that behavior. Sarah started to get really angry at me and said James should have a more severe punishment than just a talking to, as it's a perverted behavior that deserves a real punishment. I told her that as he's only 10 and doesn't understand why that's completely inappropriate, I felt like a talking to was enough and a more severe punishment would happen if he did it again. Sarah went off crying, saying how unfair this was and how I'm taking his side. I haven't changed my mind, and other than giving James a telling off, which he listened to, I've taken it no further. Sarah says it's bad parenting. Am I the a-hole?
So I will give Sarah one thing, because Sarah is our 16-year-old, correct?
Correct.
That what her mother just did was not good parenting. Not holding him accountable is a giant no-no. Teaching our kids that there are consequences for their actions is vitally important to their development. A 10-year-old definitely would understand right, wrong. Also, OP, your kids chose to handle a conflict physically. That's on you as their parent. Your 16-year-old to a 10-year-old shoved him because she wasn't getting what she wanted from a situation. Those things are taught through you and how you conflict resolve. And the fact that you let that situation, because I'm certain you were within earshot of this, the fact that you let it escalate to where it got to without intervening first is another point against you. OP, you are in the wrong. Please teach your kids that there are consequences for the actions they take. Although I believe Sarah and her brother both need to be punished. Like I said, I don't agree with the physical violence.
So, the consensus on Reddit is our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, many individuals came forward saying, 10-year-olds do know what's right and wrong. You need to teach them that, as you said, Timstradamus, that there are consequences to your actions. There are Redditors who were coming out saying, you know, if your 10-year-old in another 10 years is 20 and he decides in his upsettedness that he's going to pants someone, that can actually be seen as sexual assault.
Yep.
And you didn't properly teach your 10-year-old that that is not right to do to anyone at any time for any reason. You are teaching your child that it is okay to cross boundaries because the consequences are not severe enough. And that is bad parenting. And I agree with you, Timstradamus. Had those children been ours, both would have been punished because their reactions to the situation is wrong. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what we think about a hijacked vacation, maybe? Am I the a-hole for not letting my wife hijack a free vacation? One of my 39 male hobbies is entering raffles, sweepstakes, radio contests, etc. I've won tickets to concerts, sporting events, some household items, gift cards, but never a grand prize like a car or vacation. Until last month when I won a free trip for 4 to Florida for 5 nights. Obviously, I was super excited and told my wife, 38 female, about it right away. After our initial excitement wore off and we started talking about details, it became apparent we had conflicting ideas about this trip. Before I could even make suggestions about what I want this trip to be, my wife brought up how excited her 11-year-old daughter would be and how we could go to Disney, SeaWorld, etc. She then said we can bring her mom with to help watch her daughter so that we could have some time for ourselves. She was so excited about it and was getting wrapped up in planning things without even hearing what I wanted. I told her that all of that sounds fun, but I was thinking that we could invite another couple and have it be an adult-only trip instead of bringing my stepdaughter and mother-in-law with. She did not like my idea one bit and told me that she wouldn't feel right taking a free trip like that and leaving her daughter behind. She also said that her mom has never been to Florida, and this would be a perfect opportunity for her to go there. We argued back and forth a little bit before deciding to take a break and come back to it before telling anyone about it. Well, that lasted about 24 hours before my wife let it slip to her daughter that I had won a trip. So of course, stepdaughter immediately got excited about it and started looking into all the things she wants to do. I asked my wife why she told her daughter, and she said it was an accident, which, come on. It started a fight between us and emotions got a little high. I told her she was wrong to bring her daughter into this after we agreed to wait, and that I never agreed to take stepdaughter or mother-in-law on this trip. I told her that I was the one who won the trip, and she was acting like this was something specifically for her. She told me I was being selfish and that we should include those closest to us in something like this, especially when neither stepdaughter or mother-in-law have ever been to Florida. She said that bringing another couple and leaving her daughter home would be cruel, especially now that she's so excited about it. I told her that her daughter is only excited about it because she decided to blab to her about it instead of waiting like we had agreed. I told her if she wants to bring her daughter and mother-in-law, then she can also pick someone else to go with, because I would rather stay home by myself than go on a vacation where I don't get to be involved in any decisions. I said that if she wants to go that route, she certainly can, but I'm not paying for any of it. We have separate finances. Now she thinks I'm being a jerk and should be happy about having a free family trip. Edit, the trip is in Fort Myers, not Orlando. Am I the a-hole?
So it looks like we found two very selfish people that managed to find themselves in this big sea of people.
It seems like it.
You're getting to see it play out in their relationship. So I'll go about it like this. ROP won a trip for 4. Now, in an ideal situation, sure, you'd love to bring your kids and your wife and plan a whole thing, right? Get your mother or mother-in-law. She's never been there. It sounds like an amazing trip could be had. And that's how the wife is looking at it, at least. ROP, though, has different plans for it. He wants to have it be an all-adult trip. Now, the beginning of this story sounds very healthy, right? They're coming to the table. They're having a conversation. They could not reach a solution to it, so they took time away. That's great conflict management right there. You can step away from it, have some time to think, and then come back to it at a later point. He says 24 hours pass, and then he finds out through his stepdaughter, which, by the way, let's make a point of this. He brings up his stepdaughter a lot as his wife's daughter, not their daughter. So he already looks at their relationship and his family a little differently than you would hope, but you're allowed to have the relationship you cultivate within your families. If that is not his daughter and solely his stepdaughter, you can see why he's okay with making the trip the way he wants. But let me get back to the point. The thing they agreed on was we're not telling anyone about our decision till we've made it. I think that's completely healthy and reasonable. But he finds out through his stepdaughter that his wife told her that they're going on this amazing trip because he won tickets.
She couldn't even hold it for 24 hours.
In my mind, that feels like a very manipulative move to have done. Now, whether or not he's wrong about how to use those tickets, in my mind, yeah, that's kind of pooey of him to not plan something for the family. I don't know how old the daughter is, but you can definitely see where his priorities lie. He doesn't really care so much about the family bonding and the memories and all of those things and sharing new things together. He wants this to be an adult trip. Those are his rights to have. Those are his tickets that he won, if you want to look at it like that. If we're going to go down to the brass of what this meant. For the wife, they should have definitely respected that they needed to have the conversation and meet it out fully. You guys promised each other you wouldn't tell anyone about this. That should have been what it stayed at. But your wife sounds just as selfish as you are. She didn't want to hear what you wanted to do. She wanted to do what she wanted to do and was prepared to do what it took to get what she wanted out of it, which was use the child to manipulate the situation, which I think is very gross. In my opinion, you're not the a-hole. You're a hard person to agree with, though. I don't see life the way you do. I definitely would have cherished making another memory like that with our family. That's amazing. But my life is not yours. You're allowed to think and act the way you want. It's just your wife going beyond where she did, breaking that promise. So you got a lot to work through, not just what she did, but the way you view your family. There's a lot to be said for that. So again, you're not the a-hole, but you made it hard for me to pick.
Well, The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. And the way that a lot of Redditors see it as OP's the one that won this trip. They get to decide how they want to do it, regardless of how they're talking. Now, personally, I get so skeeved out regarding this. I'm like you. I don't like the OP. I don't, but I have to agree. If somebody won something, such as if you won something, Timstradamus, that item is yours. It doesn't matter if you and I are married. That's still your item. And therefore, you get to decide what to do with it. If we would like to go ahead and find a compromise or talk about things fully, that is a courtesy that you're extending to me. But in no way do you have any onus to me to give me what you won. That's sort of how I've bottom lined it for me. But do I like OP? No. Do I like how they talk? Not really. They kind of got a little bit more defensive. There was a lot of, I guess you could say, a mix, as there are a lot of people that said that they would really cherish doing this as a family. And then there was a lot of people that said, hey, look, I've had parents and they went on vacations without me. Everything's fine. I think a lot of people were interjecting their experiences and how they grew up and the things that they do, rather than taking this as just its own little case.
At the end of the day, the base for this was, is it okay for someone to use their kids as a manipulating factor in an argument?
No, it's not.
Then that's where it stops and finishes for me.
Well, for our next story, am I the a-hole for not inviting the neighbors to our daughter's birthday party and then awkwardly kicking them out? Hi. Yesterday was my daughter's 8th birthday and we did a princess-themed party. The only people invited were family or family friends. No, I don't like this. You haven't said hi yet.
I was waiting.
It doesn't sound right. Hi.
Hi.
Yesterday was my daughter's 8th birthday and we did a princess-themed party. The only people invited were family or family friends. My relationship with my neighbors is meh. We wave if we see them, but otherwise we don't talk to each other or anything really. During my daughter's birthday party, held in our yard that is semi-fenced, I started to bring out the cupcakes for the kids. When handing them out, I noticed that 2 kids were definitely not invited because they weren't my nieces/nephews or of a family friend. I then realized they were my neighbor's kids. I paused handing out cupcakes to ask why they were here, and one of the kids just shrugged and said, "My mommy said I could go." I told them it was inappropriate to just come here. My husband escorted them back to their parents' house. All the neighbors' houses are decently spaced, so it's not necessarily dangerous, but we felt better if someone walked with the kids. Later on, I think we did the whole cake cutting. Our neighbors approached again. This time it was both parents and the kids. I asked what they were doing, and they looked confused, saying they were joining the party. I was a little agitated now and sternly said they were not invited, and this was a birthday party for my daughter, and family/family friends were invited. It was awkward as they left, and the kids kept whining as they did. Next day, today, I got a handwritten letter in my mailbox about how I treated the neighbors rudely, and it's expected to share community events. Was I too rude/harsh?
The audacity of your neighbors. You know what I would have done with that, I guess, nicely written hand letter that was placed in your mailbox?
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
I would have wiped between me buttocks because that's as much as it's worth. How dare you tell me at a birthday party that I'm holding at my home that I have to invite anybody? Where do you get off? When would you ever self-invite to a birthday party?
Rude people do that.
OP, no, you're not the a-hole. I'm happy you have your boundaries and you didn't let people just walk into your kid's birthday. Why would they think or have the presence of mind to say, how dare you not invite us to a public event? Since when are birthday parties public events that are held at your home?
No, never.
How awkward would that be would we ever have done that with our son?
Oh, never.
Seen a birthday party happening in the neighborhood and go, do you know that kid? Oh, you don't? Let's go on over to their birthday party.
Yeah, no, never.
How awkward is that? Were you just trying to scrape a free meal and some cake?
Sounds like it.
The entitlement's real.
It doesn't matter where you are or what you do. When you do something that's rude, like self-invite, or I don't know if they just call it like willing ignorance.
I don't know. It's just odd that you would have done that. First, send your kids over. And then second, come back with them together as a family, because possibly no one will call you out as a family unit.
It's because the kids were alone and we weren't there. That's the reason why we couldn't get cake. No, I'm embarrassed for those neighbors. So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. Many Redditors said, my goodness, the entitledness of your neighbors thinking that they could just intrude on a party. That's not for them. And you made it quite clear to their kids, and then you had to make it clear to them. Please leave. Anyways, let's go to our next story and see what you think about a night in jail. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to sleep over my friend's dorm after she caused me to spend the night in jail? I, male 21, have a friend I've known for about 4 years, female 22. Recently, she just got out of a year-long abusive relationship and hasn't been taking it the best. Last Friday, after we took her dog for a walk and got something to eat for dinner, she asked me to stay the night at her apartment to keep her safe and secure since she was feeling upset. I could tell she was having a hard time with the breakup, and it wouldn't be the first time I stayed over to comfort her, so I was okay with it. Usually, she talks or moves a bit in her sleep when she has nightmares, but last weekend, she had a full-on night terror. She sat straight up and started full-on screaming, "He's going to hurt me!" over and over again. I tried to calm her down, but her roommate heard her screaming and called the police. When they got there, she still wasn't coherent, and all she could say was, "He's going to hurt me, stay away," or something to that extent. I didn't even have a chance to explain what was happening. They detained me and had me spend the night in jail. It wasn't until the afternoon after when they released me. I had a talk with her after, and she said she was having flashbacks to when her and her ex would get into fights and couldn't help it after repeatedly apologizing. Fast forward to yesterday. I haven't really talked to her much this week at all. She asked me if I'd like to go to a bar with her this weekend with a couple of her girlfriends and spend the night again. I told her I wasn't comfortable at all after last weekend, then asked if one of them could spend the night with her, especially if there's alcohol involved too. She said I was the only person she trusted and was comfortable enough to sleep in the same bed with for security. I told her again that I wasn't comfortable with the idea. She hasn't texted me since. I've tried my best to be there to help, even getting her into therapy for other reasons, but I'm not okay with putting my safety at risk. Am I the a-hole?
No, you're not. You make very logical points at the end of this. You are not equipped to help her with what she needs help with, especially when you're talking about this type of situation. She's saying that you are the only person that she can sleep in the bed with to feel secure about what's going on in her life. I am sorry that she has gone through what she has gone through, but that doesn't mean that you have to put yourself in harm's way. You spent a night in jail. I'm sorry you had to do that for something that you were wrongly put in there for. It does sound like she has a lot to work through, and I hope she does get the help she needs. You can still be a good friend, just at a distance. Know your boundaries. It sounds like you're very aware of how to navigate this. I don't see you doing it in a negative way. You're not the a-hole, OP.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP is not the a-hole. In fact, many Redditors said stick to your boundaries, especially when it is involving your safety and if you believe that that may be at risk. Many others said, we understand that your friend is suffering from PTSD. What she needs is professional help. You are not equipped to deal with that professional help. And the only thing that you can do is continue to suggest that she needs it. I think for me, remaining a friend but making sure to keep them at a bit of a distance is probably the best way to go here. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about salt.
Why'd you say it like that?
Because I love salt in my food.
Oh.
Am I the a-hole for being rude to my boyfriend after he withheld salt from me? My female 27 boyfriend, male 30, are currently on vacation with his family. I have volunteered to cook most nights because I love to cook and am the best at it out of the entire group. This evening, I was making a dish for everyone and asked my boyfriend to please get me an array of seasonings for this specific dish: MSG, soy sauce, pepper, and salt. He then said, "If you're using MSG, do you really need salt?" To which I explained that MSG is not salty, has 1/3 of the sodium content of regular salt, and that dishes, if they are using MSG, will still typically require salt. I was cooking outside of a griddle, and the dish comes together quickly, so I was not able to go back to grab any additional seasonings. I realized shortly afterward that he did not include salt, just 3 of the 4 things I requested. When asked, he said we didn't need it. I tried the food. It was bland, so he then proceeded to put an additional soy sauce, which it did not need. It needed fucking salt. Either way, I was defeated and needed to take it off, so I served it as is without salt. Everyone, upon having served, said it needed salt and proceeded to salt their own dishes. My boyfriend stood by his decision and doubled down on his argument that you can't remove salt, but you can add it, and that he preferred how it tasted as is. I was fuming because he has done this in the past and says I occasionally overseason/oversalt food. However, it does not happen regularly enough to be an issue. Occasionally accidental, I do 90% of the cooking at home and he loves my food. We argued about it and he stood his ground that he prefers his food less salty and that if I salted it, he would have been SOL and not been able to eat any of it. However, the amount of salt it required was not enough to be overly salted, and that I know for a fact the amount of salt I would have used, he would have happily eaten it. I told him his behavior felt controlling, and he hit me with I could have grabbed more salt myself, but again, this dish, if I stepped away, would have burned quickly. Am I the a-hole for being angry and calling my boyfriend controlling for not just getting me the salt I asked for it initially?
Okay, so we have not the cook telling the cook how to cook. That's the basis of this story for me. You're wrong. Your boyfriend, or is it husband? Or is it boyfriend? He needs to learn how to respect other people's opinions. Because you are correct. That is controlling. To sit there and tell someone that they don't need something that they need while they're cooking a meal, if he was really that concerned about you over-salting, it should have been on his plate to cook. So that would be my first bit of advice to you, is next time he has something to say about cooking, you can hand over the utensils and the ingredients and you can tell him to have at it. Because that can be very embarrassing, especially when you're with family, to have a dish not turn out the way it's supposed to. Even if it is someone else's fault, guess who ends up sharing the load of that guilt? It's the cook. Every time. Even I have had that at least once or twice with Voyse early on in our relationship where I think I would say something like, "Are you sure it's going to taste good?" with something new.
Are you sure you want to starve tonight? Because I can make this whole pot for just me.
I learned long ago that you just trust the process. And if it turns out bad, so
you
be
laugh
it.
about it.
Yeah, it's just something you learn and make better next time.
You get some pizza. It's a pizza night.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's not Pizza Friday. It's Pizza Tuesday.
Yep. But I learned that lesson long ago. And it sounds like I'm hoping they're young.
Do you remember what their ages were?
No, not at all.
Oh, gosh. She's 27.
Oh.
He's 30.
Okay, see, I learned that lesson in our early 20s. So that's interesting that he would still be, maybe we are talking about a little bit more control. Because that might be in other aspects. If that's how you are, where you're withholding an ingredient from someone.
Just to get your way.
That's concerning. Again, I don't know how deep that runs, but just based off of that, OP, you're definitely not the a-hole. Learn what your boundaries are. And if he's willing to, like you said, keep something away from you when you say you need it, be aware of those things. And moving forward, make sure that you hold your ground. I would suggest maybe getting into some form of counseling, though. It sounds like you guys need to head some of that off. If your communication is, I want something, and he goes, nah. No. At the end of the day, it should be left up to the cook. And me saying let her cook is strictly a metaphor. You should be doing that in every aspect of your life. If someone else is doing something, you're going to find if you take your finger off the scale and let life play out the way it should, that things will go a little more smoothly. Have less control, is what I'm saying.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP is not the a-hole. Many Redditors came out saying it does sound like your boyfriend has a bit of a control problem. And if he wants to control how much salt or other ingredients are in his food, maybe he needs to be the one cooking. The fact that OP's boyfriend essentially dug his heels into the mistake that he made because other family members had to salt their food and he refused to hold himself accountable for that ended up showing his character very clearly when it came to a lot of Redditors. Now, I was curious how much sodium was in soy sauce versus salt, and I was actually very much surprised. I've always thought that soy sauce had way more sodium than salt did, but boy, was I wrong. For 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, it's 879 milligrams of sodium. For 1 tablespoon of salt, 6,976 milligrams of sodium. Quite shocking. If someone is very worried about their salt intake, then it sounds like they just need to make the prerogative to cook their own food.
Yeah, that's overstepping. And to do it at a family event as well.
Even worse.
Ugh.
But let's go to our next story and see what you think about a birthday party. Am I the a-hole for saying no to my stepbrother coming to my birthday party? My parents are divorced and I, 15 male, have a stepbrother, 13 male, and 2 stepsisters, 10 female and 9 female. Last year, I chose to stay mostly with my dad, and I see my mom every other weekend versus the every other week schedule we had before. I prefer living with my dad. My relationship with mom isn't close, and I don't like her husband or his son. So it was a no-brainer who I'd be with more once I was old enough to decide. My mom blames my dad. She blames him for everything wrong in our relationship and the relationship with her husband and stepson. Her blaming my dad for everything is kind of why our relationship ended up this way. When I was younger and they were still married, she chose to stay away from school plays and stuff if dad was taking time off work to be there because she didn't want to be there with him because their marriage sucked. And when I asked her to come, she'd tell me it was a choice between her and my dad. My parents fought about that too, and my dad called her childish and told her to put me first. It was easier when they divorced because they fought way less. My mom isn't that warm either. She's fine, but not really the kind of parent you could seek comfort from. She has a really short temper, and she dated a lot after she and dad filed for divorce, and she introduced me to a bunch of random guys and tried to make me like them more than my dad. When she got married to her husband, she made a big deal out of me needing to spend time with his kids and putting the expectation on me to give her time with her husband. Then her stepson wanted to come with me to my dad's, and he was really trying to be my brother and would get really annoying. Then mom would annoy me because she said I should include him more. Her husband would get mad at me and say I should stay with them more since his son wanted a brother, and he told me his son could come with me to dad some weekends if I insisted on seeing my dad. It was extra shitty when dad would take me on vacations and my stepbrother would beg to go with us and I would say no. My mom would tell me to ask my dad and I'd say no. She'd tell me I was a brother whether I wanted to be or not, and I would include my sibling who wanted to go. I told her to pay for a vacation for us all, but I wasn't letting her stepson intrude when I was with my dad. My birthdays were always a shit show too, because I got 2, and dad always did something fun with me and my friends. This year is no exception, and he's taking us someplace really awesome, but it's a place my stepbrother has wanted to go for years or something, and when my dad gave my mom a heads up about it, he has to when he takes me out of state, just like she has to do the same. She told her stepson, and he wants to come. I don't want him there. Mom told me not to be a dick, and that they can't afford to take the family there. I told her it wasn't my problem. Her stepson tracked me down at school and begged me. I told him no. My mom and her husband told me I was being such a shit to him. So, am I the a-hole?
Ooh, man, the families we cultivate. You know, if they really wanted that relationship between the siblings, them putting their basically demand on our OP was the wrong way to go about it. They just have been forcing a step sibling on our OP and not letting it happen organically. Your mother and her husband sound awful. So I do have a question. Who does he live with? Does he ever say who has custody?
Yes. So I believe it was split 50-50 because it sounded like he went a week to his mother's, a week to his father's. Now he sees his mother, I believe it's every other weekend.
Okay.
And he lives with his father.
Okay, good. Because that was going to be my suggestion, knowing how the laws work. Because what they're doing to this OP is abuse. They don't have boundaries with him. And it's startling that the 15-year-old has to show the parents what boundaries look like. When someone tells you no, it's no. But they've tried every which way to force their son on him. You've ruined that relationship. There will never be a chance to recover from that. So that sucks for a 15-year-old. You're not the a-hole. I'm happy that you're learning how to have your boundaries, though. It just sucks that you have to learn it this way.
That's very true. The consensus on Reddit is our OP is not the a-hole. One of the comments that someone said was, your mom needs to learn that if your children want nothing to do with you, it's usually your own fault. For the OP, they answered and said, for my mom, it will always be my dad's fault. To which another commenter said, and that's why you were never going to bond with her new family. Who would want to be around someone who should talk their dad, regardless of if it's the other parent? This is actually kind of funny. She attempted every play in the parental alienation handbook, and it spectacularly backfired. I really despise it when parents try and use their kids as some leverage against the other parent, especially when it comes to cultivating a type of hatred towards the other parent. I don't understand individuals like that. Parents are supposed to be people that you go to. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of bad parents out there. For a lot of kids, that's something that they have to grow up either accepting that their parent is a bad one, either accepting and trying to maintain a relationship, or accepting it and moving on from the relationship. Regardless, that is for a child to learn and grow and find out. It is not for someone else to try and plant ideas in a child's head regarding those relationships.
Or for the stepfather in that situation to have pushed beyond as well, because he's just as bad as the mom.
They're all bad.
Telling him like, hey, you can't go to these trips unless your brother comes with you to your father's house. What? You
have this stepson that's tracking him in school and begging him for this. The boundaries have been crossed multiple times, not just by adults, but teaching crossing those boundaries to other kids. I'm really happy that our OP at 15 knows to stand his ground. I hate that they talk the way that they do, especially about themselves regarding these grown-ups in their life. The way that they're explaining that he's being a shit, I think is awful and shows just how much of a bad parent that this mother is. Well, let's go to our very last story of the day, and we're going to go into the today I fucked up realm. Today I fucked up by accidentally sending a love letter to my boss. Okay, so this happened literally an hour ago, and I'm still cringing so hard I might just implode. I've been crushing on this girl in my office for what feels like forever. Today, I decided to write out my feelings in an email and save it as a draft, kind of like those angry emails you write but never actually send. I poured my heart out in a heartfelt letter, detailing how much I admire her and how I've been too chicken to say it in person. But here's where the disaster strikes. I meant to save it to my drafts, but in my nervous haze, I accidentally hit send to the entire office email list. Yes, you read that right. The entire office. Now my inbox is blowing up with confused and awkward replies, and I'm sitting here contemplating my life choices. To make matters worse, my boss just walked by with a smirk on her face, undoubtedly having read my cringeworthy confession. Today, I fucked up by hitting send on the most embarrassing email of my life. Looks like I'll be working from home for the next century. The too long don't read. Meant to send a love letter to my crush, accidentally sent it to the entire office, including my boss. Now I'm contemplating life with the safety of my bed. Edit 1. A lot of people are asking how I put the entire office in the to field. For those that don't work in group-based office settings, you may be unfamiliar, but there are group emails that, when emailed, create a thread of everyone in that group. Examples being staff_XYZ company at email, and it distributes to everyone on that group list.
Group lists can be finicky. If you don't pay attention to a work email, you could be sending it to a lot of people you were not intending it to. So yes, that has happened. Obviously not on that level. I'm shocked you wouldn't have just reached out through their socials, but everyone's different.
I'm guessing they just drafted the email.
Never expecting
to actually send it. And then they were just going to toss it or be like, these are my feelings.
Well, I want to know, past the embarrassment, was there an update?
There's no update on that.
Get the date?
I don't. The thing is, if you were talking about the person, I guess it would be how vague did you keep it to not even put their name? Were you just describing your hair is spun like gold? Or
I mean, you might as well ante up, go up to the girl at this point and say, so what'd you think? You're already embarrassed. You might as well shoot your shot, right?
You're not wrong.
Don't get me wrong. You shouldn't be doing that with the people you work with. Inner office romance
can get messy if you're not careful.
Very messy. So does ROP ever reveal his age?
No, but their account was made in 2014. So in my mind, I don't know. I kind of imagine them to be in their 20s, maybe early 30s.
Okay. Well, that's an extra cringy story.
Well, it sounds like our OP definitely has learned to make sure that your to field is empty if you're going to do any mock emails.
Yeah. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
What a cringily tasty story that was to end off on.
It was. It felt like it was from The Office for a moment.
It is in The Office. Forever.
Never to be forgotten. Why did you not recall the email?
Yeah, that's going to be a fun joke he's going to have to live with for a while.
Oh, for a hot minute. If anything, it'll be a good memory for the future.
Sure. Good learning lesson. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you've seen the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays. And on our Patreon, we post Damas After Dark on Wednesdays.
Be there.
Or be square. We would also love to thank all of our Teatreons for your support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of you.
Mwah!
As always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions and comments below. What did you think today?
I would honestly love to hear our listeners if you have any embarrassing emails that you sent out at work.
I don't think I have an embarrassing email I've ever sent at work. I just think I've had embarrassing things that have happened at work.
I can see that.
Do you remember the planking trend? Long ago.
Did you plank?
Yes, I did.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'd have to say my most embarrassing email that I've ever sent at work was when I got an email from someone who told me something confidential, and then I didn't realize I was pressing reply to that email, and then their answer was there. And I was like, oh no. Well, now people know you don't like this one person, and I didn't realize I responded to the wrong one.
Yahtzee.
But I fixed your problem.
You just created a lot more. Have a nice day.
Bye. But yes, I look forward to our listeners.
So do I. It doesn't even have to be an email. It could just be something embarrassing that happened at work.
Agreed.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it in an email.
Maybe.